Happy Wednesday night and welcome to A Look on the Plus Side. This is a show where we go into the Disney Plus or the Hulu Plus catalog and we find a movie or a TV show to talk about. And tonight we're talking about Marvel's Black Widow. And with me, for the very first time, is Mr. Rob Bazemore. How are you?
I am outstanding. Rob, how about yourself?
I'm great. Thanks so much for being here, man. I appreciate it. You've been on our parks show, the Park Adventurers Club. We'll talk a little bit more about that at the end of the show. So if you guys are new to this channel, please make sure to subscribe to the Park Adventurers Club for more shows like this. We've got a trivia show and a hotel show. We've got all kinds of stuff and more on the way. I'll tell you all about that at the end of the show and also how you can help support the channel should you wish to. But in the meantime, please subscribe, give us a like. It'll help people to find us. And tonight, man, you know what, Rob? I pitched this to you because you were like, yeah, I'll do a show. And you said Doctor Who. And I was like, let's table that because I'm not a Doctor Who. I'm not an aficionado. I will study up. But we're going to have that conversation someday. But I was like, you know, this whole Thunderbolts asterisk movie was coming out. And I was thinking, how would we best prepare for that movie? And so it released last weekend. And I thought, let's watch Black Widow because the Marvel stuff's very interconnected. And this one I feel like was the best one to lead into that. So I do want to stress that we're not going to do any Thunderbolts asterisk. Spoilers in this, but we'll spoil the heck out of Black Widow. But did you see Thunderbolts yet? I guess is my question.
I did, and it was actually a really good Marvel movie. You know, people say a lot about the decline of Marvel, and this just seems like it was a bit of recovery. It wasn't. You could tell that it wasn't the largest budget. You know, and that seems like there's this reverse relationship with how much Marvel spends recently and the quality of the movies. And this was kind of in between. That it was not a low quality movie. There was definitely some budget, but nothing nearly as large as some of the more recent movies that tanked.
You know, I was grappling, trying to remember what the last one was, because normally I try to watch the one that came out before it. There have been, this was number 35, Thunderbolts was. Number 35 out of the Marvel movies, which is insane to think about, the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and that's not even including the stuff that hit Disney Plus, like Hawkeye or Werewolf by Night or any of those things. So you've really got to know your stuff anymore, and it's the same as comic books. I mean, if you want to follow the adventures of Spider-Man, there's 4 different titles plus when he goes into a limited series, and so it's very similar, but 35 movies now with Thunderbolt and with Fantastic Four on the way, and I cannot wait for that one. But with Black Widow, we were in a weird space with the Black Widow movie. That Black Widow came out after Black Widow died. Also, sorry, spoilers, Black Widow died. And when these movies first came out, I would always go back to the beginning and watch from, rewatch Iron Man, Hulk, and go all the way through. I don't do that anymore. I don't think we have time for it. But the other thing that I always used to know is like, where does this, this chapter of the saga start, or this phase, and where does that one end? And I don't pay attention to that anymore. So I'm trying to consume it all. And I agree with you. Marvel feels like it's been fluttering a little bit between, I know people didn't love the Marvels, the Captain America movie, the Brave New World that came out. I don't know if that hit as hard as they wanted it to, but yeah, Thunderbolts was good. But Black Widow, let me go back to the beginning of this one because I feel like there's a lot of history in this, and it starts with me. Let's go back to the fact that in 2004, before Iron Man, before the MCU, Lionsgate actually had the rights to this movie for a hot minute and was going to make a movie about Black Widow, and then they dropped it and they didn't do it. So this has been kind of in the making since February of 2004. And then have you done any research to know who they thought they might put in this role before Scarlett Johansson was cast?
No, I haven't. Tell me.
So I tried to ask AI today to blend that actress with Black Widow, and it kept saying no. Like it was, I guess, copyright. I don't know why. So I took my Photoshop skills and put in Emily Blunt was originally...
Wow.
That would fit, right? Like,
yeah, I could definitely see that.
Yeah. So I mean, Emily Blunt was one that they had the one they had considered for Black Widow, and then they ended up going with Scarlett Johansson. Apparently, she was she was filming Gulliver's Travels, so she couldn't be bothered.
Maybe she'll be a variant in the upcoming multiverse sagas. She'd be a great variant.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. We first saw the Black Widow in Iron Man 2, then Avengers, then Winter Soldier, Age of Ultron, Civil War, Infinity War, Captain Marvel. Apparently, she was I don't remember it, but she was a cameo uncredited. And then Endgame, and then, of course, the Black Widow movie. But she dies in Endgame, and then they go, you know what? I think we should have done this standalone movie. Do you feel like, before we get into like the breakdown of it, do you think that it was that seeing it out of context with the rest of her story, did it bother you?
No, not at all. Actually, it felt very much like a standalone movie. It gave us a lot more insight about Black Widow, but it also gave us, I think, perhaps some of the much needed background for Yelena. So, because we knew her backstory a little bit more, I think it makes the stakes in Thunderbolts much higher, right? If you didn't have that character backstory, or you didn't have the backstory of or of the rest of the cast, which just gave you, I don't think there would have been much at stake in Thunderbolts.
Yeah. So when I'm watching, Black Widow, I feel like it jumps around a lot because they take us back to her origins, and then we see her through montage come up in the ranks, and we know pieces of her backstory because of what they told us in Avengers and what we've heard in other places. So there are definitely bits and pieces of it that were still out there and we were unsure of, that they clued us into. But some other drama happened outside of this movie leading up to it. Firstly, though, COVID. You remember COVID?
Unfortunately, I do.
Yeah. So
back when everything was great.
Back when it was 6 feet forever. Yeah.
Yeah.
So COVID, this movie was supposed to come out in May of 2020. And then things didn't happen. Things were bad. The world was closed down. And so they actually held it off. It was delayed 3 times. It finally came out in May of 2021 and actually broke several pandemic box office records because of people coming out to the theater. It grossed over $379 million. And that was worldwide at the time. People were still afraid to go to the theaters. The budget was 288, so at least it made 60 some million. But it was critically acclaimed. People loved Scarlett Johansson in this. Florence Pugh, the whole the fight scenes were well revered. The whole thing, everybody was on it. But when they released it, they also released it simultaneously with Disney Plus Premier Access. Remember that?
I do.
Did you ever buy any of the Disney Plus Premier Access?
No, I think, honestly, I'm a big fan of the movie going experience. So whenever I have the option to go to see it on the big screen versus seeing it at home, I always go to a theater.
I said, do you remember Premier Access? And Jay Ware in chat said Scarlett Johansson remembers it very well.
Yeah. And so does go ahead.
Chapek?
Yeah, so does J-Puck, very clearly.
So the point is that they released it, like it delayed, they released it, and they just released it simultaneously on Disney Plus, and Scarlett Johansson had a big bonus attached. If it hit a certain amount of money, she would have gotten more money. She was paid $20 million reportedly for this. She would have been paid more money had they made more at the box office, but she felt like this kind of like shot the tires out from under the car.
Of course it did. I don't think there's any doubt that it did.
Yeah. So then she went and sued the Disney company, And I feel like more like tragic for me was she had been in talks to star in and produce a Twilight Zone Tower of Terror reboot movie that would have been awesome, and then like this kind of like the whole Robin Williams thing back in the day with the genie severed ties with the company,
Yeah.
at least for the moment. And then they made it right by her, and I think she ended up getting another 40 million or so out of
Well,
it.
they made it right by her. You mean by she sued them and they knew that they were going to lose a lot of money, so they paid her anyway? Okay, gotcha.
Yes, you're
It's
right.
not like they voluntarily did it.
I'm phrasing it in a way that makes the Disney company look good here, and they were not.
Yeah.
Agreed. So yeah, so again, there was a lot of drama, not just the COVID delays, but also the dropping it simultaneously on Disney Plus, and then and with the Premier Access, and then of course the lawsuit. So I feel like it was kind of marred in controversy a little, but it was still, it was still released. It was still a Marvel movie, and we all still watched it. So when this movie, as I mentioned, starts out, we're seeing young Natasha and Elena growing up, and we don't know what's happening. They throw us right into this like little kids playing. Their father comes home. He's distressed. Then it like breaks into the action immediately, and is like this basically a chase with the family, and it's and it's exciting. I love this era of it, but there's a thing that bothers me, and I don't know if it bothers you. They're being chased by Shield, and it says Shield on the side of their car. Coulson goes out of his way in Iron Man to say we are the strategic homeland, and he goes through the whole deal. And they're like, you need to find a way to make that shorter, and he goes, we're working on it. I feel like you've messed up the canon.
Rob, you're overthinking it, my friend. Overthinking it. They look for so many different ways to tie in the rest of Marvel, the universe in there, right? With Shield, was there a reason that they had to show Secretary of State Ross there? They were just looking for ways to further tie in the extended Marvel universe into this show.
Yeah, and William Hurt was General Ross in this one. So back before he passed away, was this his last? I think this was his last appearance as General Ross. Correct?
Yeah, that's the last I can remember. Yes, for sure.
Yeah, because we had already seen him by that point. But as they've it starts out with them, as I said, kind of as kids. They're on the run. Then they get back to Russia, and then they get thrown into the Red Room and the Black Widow program, and then we go through the montage. Got to have a montage, and that's the opening credits. Is this montage of how Natasha goes from being a kid to being Black Widow, and then we pick up with her after the events of Civil War. Is it super clear where this falls in the timeline, since we're seeing it? It's almost a prequel. Is it super clear to you?
It is to me, right? Because they're talking about the Accords, talking about which side Captain America is on versus Iron Man versus Black Widow. I think for those people who are a Marvel fan, I think you can piece it together because they're on the run.
Yeah. So when we finally meet up with her later, she's seeing all these guys sneak into the building, and there's Thaddeus, and so they're trying to catch her, but of course you can't catch her because she's too smart, and we're all like caught by surprise when they're not kicking down the right door. We knew that was going to happen, though, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
I'd actually love that series.
Misdirect.
Because it really shows what her skill set is, right? She doesn't have any superpowers. She's just a badass. And this just shows how she outsmarts, the smartest intelligence agencies on the planet, and not with a bunch of technology, with a few gadgets she may have, and just her intelligence and experience.
Yeah. And then we catch up with her sister, Elena, Yelena. I said Elena, but Yelena. And she's having this fight with this lady, and we don't really quite understand why. But this move right here, where she drops the knife and uses it, I feel like I've seen that recently a lot, and I always think to myself, why don't they do that all the time? And it's so brilliant. I feel like, especially in movies like this, we're taking the fight scenes to the next level. I think of Daredevil and that long hallway in the Netflix series. That's a very famous fight. This one, I feel like the fighting takes center stage in some of these, and I think they do an amazing job. I love, again, the knife drop thing. It's such a cool. I don't know. I get excited about stuff like that.
That's it. It's I have seen similar moves in other movies from even going back to Star Wars, right? We see some of it there, but it's a clear indicator that it's not about your raw strength. It's not about how what a great fighter you are. That's a move that they get from experience, right? And it shows the training and the long experience they have to have those kind of moves. It's not just a brawl. It's actually technique that wins the day.
Yeah. And I think to emphasize how much they wanted fighting in this one, adding Taskmaster to this was the perfect way to add that kind of fighting, because historically Taskmaster, first off, is a guy. Is usually a dude, and they've done a switch on this with us, and there's a lot of misdirect in that too. Like, you don't know if you don't know. You don't
Yeah.
know who Taskmaster is when you go through here. But the fact that Taskmaster is a mimic and mimics fighting skills just shows that they're going to take the fighting skills sort of to the next level, and that Yelena and Nat have met their match in the Taskmaster. But I think the Taskmaster is such a cool like aesthetic, just the whole thing, and they really brought it to life, I think, super well. But
And it's not just a fighter, right? There's such a tragic backstory to the Taskmaster. But the one thing, and I'm not going to give any spoilers here, but the Taskmaster that's here and the Taskmaster that's in the Thunderbolts bear zero resemblance to each other. So
that's true.
So
Yes.
it's interesting how they kind of rebuilt or rewrote this character for Thunderbolts.
Yeah. No, you're right. Um, so everything's happening very quickly, and they really rush us through this for this movie to be able to get us where we need to be, and that's when the sisters get back up together again. So Natasha's on the run, and she's got a safe house that she's set up in the middle of nowhere. And there's a scene right here that I've paused where it says Steve Rogers and Natasha Romanoff are currently on the run. So there's your placement of where they are in this whole situation. That's after Civil War, after she's done the wrong thing or thinks it's the right thing, and trying to help Steve get out of it, and Steve and Bucky, and then the whole breakdown, and some of the guys are in jail, and yeah. But it's really neat that it's, even though we know that's what's happening in the world, has nothing to do with what's happening here. Literally nothing. There's no tie-in at all whatsoever, and it's in kind of like a bottle episode, and I kind of love that. So there's a lot of character building between, like, trying to figure out, like, Nat's past and her contacts with Rick, and what he's making happen with getting her all the resources that she needs here. And then she finally meets up with Taskmaster, and they have their big battle on the bridge, and it's pretty cool. Like, some of the stuff between the the sword across the ground, and kicking up the fire, and like them mimicking each other in their fighting styles, it's really well done. And I don't think it's gratuitous at all. I think does that make sense?
Yeah, and I think that it's interesting. It keeps so fast paced. You have to think about, when you look at most Marvel movies, it's about there's wondrous superpowers and huge budgets, lots of CGI involved, and this movie gave a similar a level of excitement with just great pacing, great character development. Anyway, I love this movie when I saw it the first time, And when I rewatched it, I love it again. It's again a great quality movie done on a much lower budget,
Yeah.
much deeper character development, and again, it was a great movie.
Rob, I have a very important question for you. Is
Yeah.
it Budapest or Budapest?
Well, for Southern Americans like me, it's Budapest. For those who are worldly, it sounds like it's Budapest.
I love that they have that little interaction back and forth. Budapest, it's Budapest. Budapest,
Yeah,
like so on and so forth.
it was cute, and there was such a great dynamic between the two actors as well. There,
And is it
they
neat?
felt like they felt like they're siblings the way they bickered and picked on each other across the way.
Well, and that's very cool because they don't, they don't make it another necessarily a love interest. It doesn't always have to be a love interest situation. And so that, yeah, that the fact that they're just like palling around, although he claims to be a friend and she claims I've got friends. So, she's still doing the whole soldier thing of trying to keep people at arm's length. But between the Budapest thing and also niche or niche?
Oh, it's niche.
Niche. Okay.
It's niche.
Because it's
no doubt. Yeah.
no doubt niche. You heard it here first, folks. I saw somebody in another YouTube video ask that question about pronunciation, and he said, "Tell us in the comments below." And it's like, how are you going to tell me in the comments below? It's spelled exactly the same way.
NITCH.
Niche. Yeah, it's fine. We're all fine. So then she goes to the apartment to find her sister, and I don't know that it's been clear to me. Let's back up a second. When they get kicked out and they have to flee to come back to Russia, they've stolen something. Do we ever know what that is?
Not that I know of.
Okay. I thought that was interesting today when I was rewatching. Is that like there's a disc of information and he's like, "Did you get it?" And he's like, "Yeah, I got it." And he gives him the disc and he's like, "Is this the only copy?" He said the rest of it burned. But I don't know. Like, it would have been nice if that came back, but I don't think it does. Like, that was the one thing that helped him to put the red room up in the air. I don't know.
Well, so a couple options that are there. One, it could just be details about the program itself, right? They're after him about the program, or it could have been information about the neural mapping, right? Because that was one of the things they were working on. It could have been early neural mapping data that they needed to secure and take back to the red room for it to work. So I think it's either one of the two.
Okay. So anyway, I don't remember how she got to Elena's apartment. Either she's been keeping an eye on her or it was something about the mail she sent, but she goes back to find her and she walks in. Those fight scenes, again, are very cool. And I don't know, like, this is going to sound so dated, but it makes me feel like the whole Jackie Chan thing where he just finds whatever to do the fight scenes. Yeah. That's what this whole thing was about, them doing the fight scene back and forth and just finding things along the way to throw at each other or cut each other with. And again, they're very evenly matched because they were trained by the same outfit.
Well, I think it continues the narrative that the Black Widows are super resourceful, right? They don't always have whatever they want. They may be across the world in an environment where they don't have access to any resources, but they will figure out how to get stuff done. That's part of their training. That's what they trained so far for. And, they're resilient and can figure out how to get out of any situation.
Yeah. I don't know. I agree with you. I had somebody comment on the video or on social and said something about that people didn't give this one a chance because it was girls doing things that boys do. Never even occurred to me. Because these girls are so badass. It just never even occurs to me. They're just fighters, and like it's a fight scene. Doesn't really matter if it was the two of them or I love the scene at the end of Civil War with Bucky and Iron Man and Cap fighting, like that one. The choreography on the fighting for that, they must, as much fighting as there is in all these movies, they must be continually workshopping what can we do this time to make it better than last time.
Yeah. Well, obviously, I saw a few interviews with Scarlett Johansson, and before she plays the role, I mean, she could be doing a year's worth of, martial arts training prior to it. So, I'm sure that I'm sure they use the same choreographers along the way. So I'm sure, up to a year before a movie shoots, they're probably training on these specific sets of moves or scenes as they go along. But I think a lot of the problem here was less about it being, two women as the main characters. And I think it's more about, honestly, and this may seem like blasphemy to many people, but if you look at the Marvels in general, Black Widow is kind of a B character, right? People want the flashy big characters like the Hulk or Thor or an Iron Man. Black Widow is a kind of a second tier. She doesn't have any powers other than she's just a badass. She's well trained. She's super smart, super resourceful. But that's not. I would have had ever anticipated that a Black Widow movie would generate the same kind of revenue that an Iron Man would, just because it's not the same level of passion around the characters.
Yeah, and I think that there was a time in the Marvel Cinematic Universe where they were like, "Oh, well, we can throw anything out there. You've never heard of the Guardians of the Galaxy, but we're going to make you love them, and we're going to, bring out like Shang-Chi or any of these other characters that they bring out." So, and for a while that worked, and then I think at some point it stopped working. Eternals, but I do think. But I do think that it was cool to see them go deeper into these catalogs and bring out more characters and more characters each time. So
You know,
I enjoy most of them. I was gonna say every single one of them. I enjoy most of them. There are some movies that I'm like, I could probably skip this if I'm trying to, catch up on my Marvel for the next big movie. But I'm looking forward, like I said, to Fantastic Four coming out and what that's gonna do. But this one kept moving. I feel like there was never really any downtime in this one.
great pacing, great pacing. And you look at movies like the Eternals. On paper, I would have thought Eternals would have been a much bigger movie or a much better movie than this, right? The budget, the CGI, the number of powerful characters. Looking at the scale of the danger that the world is under. All of the checks would lead to the Eternals being a great movie. But Black Widow, in my opinion, was a significantly better movie. It was better written, better character development, better pacing. Pretty much everything about the movie was better than at a probably half or even a third of the cost of the Eternals movie.
Yeah, sometimes you gamble and it doesn't pay off, but I agree with you. I think this one, I mean, you brought it up. Like in us doing this review, this discussion, and going back and rewatching it, it really was fun to watch it again. So
Yeah.
I enjoyed watching it again and catching all the things that maybe I didn't catch the first time. And let's talk about the cast a little bit, though. Scarlett Johansson, obviously, Florence Pugh just kills it. Like I feel like, and I don't know if it's just Florence or Yelena or the combination of both of them, but whether it's Hawkeye or this or Thunderbolts, so amazing. My favorite. She's so good, and I think most people think that too.
Yeah, and I will tell you that and again, no spoilers, but in Thunderbolts, she was the star of the show again, and part of it I think is because we got this backfill character development in the Black Widow movie. But yeah, she was a remarkable character, even with the really bad Russian accent. It ended up still being a great movie. But again, I reiterate, I don't think she would have been as believable or as acceptable in that role and stepping into a leadership role if we had not had the backstory that came in Black Widow.
Yeah, that's true.
And like the
David
Red
Harbour.
Guardian, I mean, I'm sorry.
I was about to say the same thing. I just said David Harbour. I was talking about him next.
Yeah, I mean, and that same scenario, right? He's obviously, and I told you this last week. He's obviously a comic relief, um, uh, 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 character in the movie, and the Thunderbolts he was too. But again, the back development where you see him, that he so desperately wants to be a superhero, and he so desperately wants to be revered by the public. And again he obviously he's clumsy. He's not very smart. Although it's interesting that he has some powers from a super serum, a super soldier serum. So he has some capabilities that most don't. But his lack of intelligence, really makes him be a comic relief character. But again, this, the Black Widow, his role in the Black Widow movie really sets him up to be successful in Thunderbolts.
Yeah, I mean, he's great. David Harbour. Did you watch Violent Night, the one where he's Santa Claus?
I did not.
Go
I'm writing it down.
watch that movie, Violent Night. You know what? If it's on Hulu, we'll review it at some point. But he was
Yeah,
so freaking good in that. Obviously, as Hopper on Stranger Things, he's been great. I
yeah.
don't know that I watched his version of Hellboy, but I'm sure he was fantastic, probably. But he is so good that I turned to my wife after Thunderbolts. I was like, why don't we watch more things with David Harbour in them? Because I know he's in more things than I've seen. So, but he's so different. The Hopper character versus the Red Guardian. I mean, could not be any polar opposite. They both have like the whole daddy thing, but again, it's very, very different. But I love his
I saw an
scene
interview.
I was gonna
Sorry.
say I love his scene in the prison, where he's doing all the arm wrestling. What were you gonna say?
I saw an interview. I think it was Jimmy Fallon that he was on, and it's so interesting to see him cleaned up, and kind of as a normal human being. It's almost like you don't believe that's the real him.
Yeah, no, I could see that. But so again, David Harbour, great in this. Rachel Weisz, is that how you pronounce her name? That played Melina, the mother. She was good. And then William Hurt again as at this point Secretary Ross
Yeah,
was good. And then you had all the different people playing the widows and Olga playing Antonia. But I feel like that your main characters are Scarlett, David, Florence, and Rachel, with Ray Winstone playing Dreykov. There was something weird about Dreykov's portrayal that like he reminded me of like somebody else, and I don't know who. Like it was not Marlon Brando, but somebody else in that vein, that Ray was trying to pull off with playing Dreykov, but. Um, but not a
don't forget
huge cast though. Not a huge cast. We don't see a
don't forget
ton of those usual uh, like Marvel crossover characters. Sorry, go ahead.
don't forget the poor pig.
The one where they make him stop breathing.
Yeah, just by telling him to stop breathing, that's nuts.
Well, let me just tell you this. I don't know if you watched it, but on Disney Plus, there are a lot of extras on this one, which I love that. Not only is there like a different format you can watch this in, the IMAX enhanced, but you can also watch all these like behind the scenes things, deleted scenes, extended scenes, and then there's a gag reel. And on the gag reel, there's a bit where basically the pig stops production, like it steals the show because he's not doing what they need him to do, and it was very funny. But it's very sad in the movie that she makes him stop breathing. That's like for sure. But
Yeah,
it's I guess a necessary evil to show us how powerful this mind control and his ultimate plan for taking over the world, I guess.
I think in terms of size of the cast, I think this is the right size. I think if they go any larger, it dilutes the story. It doesn't allow them to tell a good, solid backstory of these characters that many of which will be used again, have been used again in other Marvel movies. It allows you to make deeper connections with each of these characters. When you throw
Yeah.
in sometimes the very large movies and there's 20 or 30 people to pay attention to, you don't really get to have a meaningful story from anyone there. Everything gets diluted.
Well, and on top of that, you have to earn that payoff. Like Civil War earns that payoff because it took a while to get there and to introduce all these characters. And even though we see all the characters in the first Avengers movie or in Age of Ultron, we don't really see them like this until Civil War and that many. But they earned that. They worked their way up to that.
Yep.
And so yeah, you're right. And to your point too, Iron Man 3 is a much more intimate movie because of it being like just him, as
Yeah.
opposed to like all of the other nonsense that happens in that sphere. So, all right, so yeah, you're right. So the cast is small, but almost by design, and that's great. I do think it's interesting when they go and they break the Red Guardian out of prison, Alexei out of prison, that they're wearing white. Almost as if to say, like, just so you can differentiate that we're the good guys, because all the stormtroopers or the guards are wearing black in this one. So, but those are some cool outfits. I think she called it the White Widow costume when she was in the pre-production stuff.
Which looks great in it.
Yeah. So, again, thank you guys for being with us tonight. I appreciate it. I'm looking at the chat, and I saw that Dawn said, I hated that pig scene, so we'll not replay the pig scene. You guys were having that conversation about the pig scene because, well, I mean, if like a squadron of these, like, guards can be, like, just leveled and just decimated, and we are like, oh, that's great. Hurt one animal, and we are coming for you. And as a matter of fact, there's a website called Does the Dog Die? Are you familiar with that? DoesTheDogDie.com, where you go and you check and make sure that there's nothing sad going to happen in the movie to an animal before you watch it. That's a thing. So again, thank you guys for being with us in the chat. I see Patrick's hanging out now. I also appreciate if anybody hasn't already to give us a like, and also make sure you subscribe to this channel. And again, we'll tell you more in a bit about how you can help the channel. But Rob, one thing you may not know about A Look on the Plus Side is we like to hit you up with trivia when you're not expecting it. That's right now. I'm going to hit you up with some trivia, things that I noticed from watching this. And so I hope you're ready. And you can't cheat. You can't Google it.
I'll try. I'll do my best.
Okay.
We'll see how dumb I really am.
Yeah, we have to do it. We have to. And, Patrick, again, is in the chat, and I think he really appreciates when anybody besides him is being left to trivia. So there's a couple things that's going to be a little different about trivia here tonight. Is that one of the things I wanted to ask, and I think this should be an easy thing for you, as I mentioned at the top, that this movie was offered as Premiere Access, which was Disney Plus's way of taking a movie and making money on it on top of the money you were already paying for Disney Plus. So the way that would work is you would pay an extra $20 to $30 for a movie for the right to be able to see it when it dropped in your house. There were several other movies that were also Premiere Access. Can you name two others that were Premiere Access besides Black Widow?
Oh my gosh. I'll start by telling you that I intentionally tried to block out that portion of my life.
There were 5 total, and I think Black Widow probably made it so that they never wanted to do that again. But there were 5 total. How about one?
Honestly, I can't even give you one.
Really?
I know that's embarrassing.
You know what? Patrick just dropped in chat and said Raya and Soul. Raya is correct. Oh. Soul was free. That's the thing I found interesting about the Pixar movies. They released Soul, and they released Turning Red and Luca, all for free, and like direct to Disney Plus, all for free. And yet, and Artemis Fowl. Do you remember that one? Artemis Fowl. It was supposed to be a theater movie, and then COVID happened, and they just were like, this wasn't going to be a hit anyway. We're just going to drop it on Disney
It's
Plus.
Not that good anyway.
Yeah, exactly. I'm lucky I saw it before they pulled it off. But the very first one was Mulan, because that was the movie that the live action Mulan was supposed to have dropped before COVID happened. I actually got to see it at a D23 event, and then it was going to drop in March, like I think March 28th of 2020, and they had to pull it. And because they kept moving it, and they finally said, hey, we've got a different idea. We're going to use the premiere, and we're going to release Mulan. So they did Mulan, they did Raya and the Last Dragon, they did Cruella. um, and then Black Widow, and both of those were same day and date theater premiere and Premiere Plus, and then they ended it with Jungle Cruise. That was the last one that they did. So
I
that's
think
not really
that was
fair. That's not really fair for me to ask you that. It really had nothing to do with the movie itself. It was really just more the lore of the time. But I'm glad that model went away. I did buy Mulan, and here's the other thing: is buying it didn't let you keep it. Buying it let you watch it.
yeah. But I wonder because obviously at that time with the stock, Chapek had a big push to increase subscribership. I don't know if you remember, but during that period of time, the only thing Disney was talking, well, the biggest majority thing Disney was talking about on all the investor calls was the number of subscribers they have on Disney Plus. So I think they were the idea, understanding that a Disney Plus subscriber, if you capture them, they're probably subscribing for months or years, right? So there's a long term revenue associated with each captured new subscriber. So that was a big push. Definitely, I don't think it was the number one thing for their financials, but I think it did serve. It did help serve the growth of Disney Plus subscribers.
Yeah, no, I don't disagree with that. But looking back at it, like, hey, here's a movie that we can't release in the theater, and we could just give it to you, but we're not going to do that either. We could just use it as a tool to drive, as you said, the subscribers, but we would also like a little bit of money on top. So give us $30, please. Which again, my wife loves Mulan. She was planning on seeing it for her birthday. COVID happened when it came out. Movie. Bought it, which was also mired in controversy, but for other reasons. So maybe we'll talk about that one someday. Here's the next question.
It was also a tough time, right? Because the theaters themselves were really struggling at that time. So to pull people from coming in, every person who watched it at home wasn't buying popcorn in the theater. They weren't, buying plastic of any sort. They weren't buying drinks or candy. I think there was a huge impact to the theater industry as well.
It's always sad when they're not buying plastic, Rob.
Yep,
all right,
always.
so here's the next question. When it opens up, this movie is the girls and the family, and they're living in Ohio. What year do they say it is?
Dude, why are you just trying to make me look like a fool?
I'm not. I would have thought you would have wanted to know for context anyway what year it was.
Honestly, I don't know. I know it feels like it was probably in the late 70s. Honestly, I don't recall. What was that? What year was it?
How old would that make Natasha at that point if it was the late 70s? But no, that's fine.
Right now she could be in her early 40s.
So Dawn says Rob makes everyone look foolish. It's nothing personal. Sorry, I'm not. But right. It's for the fun. I'm not looking to make people feel uncomfortable. That's not a thing.
Easy to make me foolish. So
yeah. One thing I do think is interesting about the date on this one is I don't know if you ever do this when you're watching like movies and looking at time periods and things like that. But I'm always interested in how well do they get the time period right as far as like brands and things like that. I know that sounds a little bit weird, but so in this movie it was 1995, and again,
wow.
It's fine. One of the things that I thought was neat is this scene. So they're driving. Yeah. You see this very quickly. That Burger King logo changed in 1999 to be the one we know with the blue swoosh now. So they got their time period right with that. And if you look at that Shell station in the background, the gas price is $1.17 a gallon.
Yeah.
I know. It's super dorky. I'm so sorry.
I think it's good. I think a lot of that stuff becomes subliminal too, right? You don't notice it, but it just feels like it's the right time. So no, I think it's great.
And I wondered about, like, I see this Hardee's sign, and I wonder if, like, that Hardee's existed in Cleveland, Ohio in 1995. I don't know, but, yeah. And again, this is going to sound ridiculous, but, like, I like looking at the, like, this billboard in the background where you see the McDonald's logo and, just checking out stuff like that. It's really weird. All right, so it was 1995 is the answer to that one. The next question is...
Wow.
She talks the mom, when they see the little girl, she talks about the bugs that are flying in the trees and the bioluminescence, and she calls them by their scientific name, which is like Lamprus nocticula, which I had never heard before. What what did the little girl say that she saw? What does she call those bugs?
Not fireflies, I'm assuming.
Not fireflies. Which, by the way, I learned this. Apparently, it's regional. Whether you say lightning bugs or fireflies is regional.
Oh yeah, it is. Yeah.
But she called them neither. She called them lamp bugs.
Okay.
Yeah, you're like, why? Why? Here's an easy one, Rob. You ready? There was a song that meant a lot to Yelena in this one, and it was called American Pie. Who sang American Pie?
Bye, bye, Miss American Pie. Chevy Tuesday, the levee was dry.
It's not going to be in the song. I don't know what you're saying. You're like trying to get to the chorus, like it's going to be in the chorus.
Vocals. What the vocals sound like? I don't know, man.
I was going to say, if you don't know this one, you're going to hate me on the last one. And there's only one more. By the way, Patrick has dropped it, and so has Jay Ware, Don McLean. And you should listen to the Weird Al spoof where he sings about I'm going to be a Jedi.
Weird Al.
Just you're writing that down. You're putting that in your notes. Listen to that later. All right, here's the last one, and I don't know if you're going to know this one. She's in the trailer. She's by herself. She's watching a movie. What movie is she watching? Because she quotes it as it's happening.
Come on, Hackett. Tell me what it is.
Patrick, he wants you to give him the answer. He's looking at the chat now, and he wants you to give him the answer to it. Wow. I mean, that's
is it a James Bond movie?
It is a James Bond movie. Did somebody tell you that? Oh, Rosita said it was James Bond. Do you know which one?
I don't.
It was Moonraker.
Oh.
And it was a Roger Moore James Bond movie, which I thought was interesting.
But
what's so funny about that is like I remember that, so it's really sad for me that I remember that. But
I think he's the one true James Bond. Roger Moore is.
What? How could you not say Sean Connery? Like I grew up with Roger Moore, cool. But I still think Sean Connery, and I always wanted Pierce Brosnan. And then
Roger Moore is the more refined womanizer. I just think he's what I envision when I think of James
Bond. Patrick says, "Fun fact: I've never seen a Bond. What? There's like 25 of them. How have you never even accidentally seen a Daniel Craig James Bond movie? They're awesome." And by the way, the Daniel Craig, this is totally not Disney Plus, but the Daniel Craig, I'm a huge James Bond fan. The Daniel Craig ones are great movies, but they don't feel like Bond movies to me. Like, and again, maybe that's just because it changed so much, but like the Timothy Dalton ones seem more James Bondish.
The Daniel Craig Bond movies feel more like Black Widow. They're super fast paced, really well organized fight scenes. He has to be really smart to figure stuff out. They feel actually, that's probably intentionally, right? Because both of these ladies are spies, right? So maybe there's a reason why the feel is very James Bond, but they seem very similar to me.
Well, that's it, man. That's all the hassle I'm giving you with that one.
Sorry, man. I'm sorry. Yeah. I failed my test.
No.
I'll study more next time.
It's all good, my friend. It's all good. So the Black Widow motion picture soundtrack, the score I think is good. I love the music on these movies, especially when she takes off in the jet at the end. When he gets her like the Quinjet and it starts to take off, and you hear the Avengers anthem behind it as she's taking off. So good. It is so good. But like the soundtrack to it is the musical score. I don't think has any of the pop songs that were on it. But Lauren Baff was the composer. But the pop songs that were on it, there was, as we mentioned, there was American Pie, but there's also this really cool version of Nirvana during that montage at the very beginning. Are you familiar with what I'm talking about?
I'm not, but I'm gonna go back and rewatch it.
Did you see this movie, Rob? That's really the question I guess I'm
I
asking at
watched it
this
like three
point.
times, but you and I watch things very differently.
It was Nirvana Smells Like Teen Spirit, and it was during that whole montage at the beginning where they're showing them going from the girls that get taken away and they're taught in the red room and the tests they go through and all that kind of stuff. And it was by Malia J is her name, and I love a haunting version of a song, and it's so slow and haunting, and it's so good. And immediately I was just like, I need this in my life. This Smells Like Teen Spirit one. And then American Pie by Don McLean. And then as she's driving along before she gets blown up, she's listening to Sia Cheap Thrills. None of those songs are on there, but I think it's an interesting mix of the Nirvana remix, which would have probably been around that time anyway, and then the American Pie song, which was obviously a favorite of hers and is a tie that brings her back to Alexi, and then the Sia song would have been of the moment when she 21 years later. So anyway, I think that's a neat mix of music, but I love that Avengers anthem that they bring in there. I think that's pretty good. So yeah. One of the other things that was weird to me in this, and I don't know if you noticed this in rewatching it. Do you remember when they're in Melena's farm, which by the way was like an old army base that they made into her farm? I thought that was pretty cool as far as the production.
Cool.
Yeah. She's going through and she finds this photo album and she recognizes it and she picks it up and she reads through it. I didn't remember that that young Natasha grabbed it and Melena said, "Put it down. We're not taking anything with us." So then I'm like, how did she get the album? Or am I talking about something that, again, you don't remember either of these times, when she picked it up or when she picks it up at the end?
I remember both of the times, but I don't remember any correlation between the two, or I would have no idea how they would be able to still have that at the end of the movie.
It was just so weird to me because, again, when she has it, I thought, well, didn't they have to like escape pretty quickly?
There, yeah, she was very clear that everything had to stay.
Yeah, when they left. And so they're getting all of their stuff together in the beginning, and she's grabbing a gun, and they're getting in the truck. And so really quick, when Nat goes inside, she sees the album, and she starts to take it, and she tells her to put it down. Don't take anything with you. And then they pause on her for a second, and then Nat leaves the room, and we don't see it. So clearly, she grabbed the book then.
She stole it. Yeah.
But it was interesting. I guess the part that they're trying to show us about that is that this family meant something to each of them. Even though it was a fake family for a limited amount of time, it meant something to each of them. And so as we like see them again meeting for the first time, and David Harbour's so excited that this is our family is back together again, and then they're like, Natasha and Melena are like, we weren't really a family. And so I think it's a very dysfunctional family, but it's still a family, and we see that bond move into Thunderbolts.
Yeah, and I think again that's another piece. They talk a lot about that this was probably the closest piece of normalcy that any of them had in their lifetime. So just trying to reach back to wanting to have stability, wanting to have a normal life. It makes each of the characters even sadder than they were outside of it.
Yeah. Well, Patrick's asking questions.
A dysfunctional family is what you crave because it's so much better than anything else you had.
Good point. Patrick is talking about something from Thunderbolts. We're not talking about Thunderbolts, but he made a good point. So here's another thing that I wanted to talk about before we kind of wrap up here is that the special effects in this, I'm always amazed at what needs to be a special effect and what doesn't. Like, so when you're watching a movie and you see, you don't know where the special effects are. If they've done their job right, you don't know when there was, like, when you go watch an old Disney movie, you know when they were using a matte painting. It is perfectly clear when they were using a matte painting. And Herbie the Love Bug is a great example, or Mary Poppins. And honestly, I don't mind it because they were so beautiful from a design standpoint, that I'm all about it. I think that's great. But in scenes like this, where they're in the farmhouse, and it clearly feels like and here's the pig, the scene I was talking about. But you can see out the back and then on the side that they're on a soundstage with like blue screens, and they're gonna patch that in later. That feels like that should have just been outdoors, but I guess you can't always control the lighting, the weather, and things like that. So I think that from making these things really seamless, I think they do an amazing job of tricking us into thinking what we're seeing is real, especially at the very, very end with that big, fight scene where the Red Room is coming crashing down, or the one, here's the one on the bridge. Like, I mean, that wasn't a real bridge. That was on a soundstage. Like, what are you talking about? That should have been a real bridge, but they fill it full of smoke, and they use the computer technology magic that they do, and they fool us. But did it? I mean, it doesn't ever take you out of it, right? They do such a good job.
Yeah, and that's again another big positive about this movie is, the special effects in general don't take you away from the story. Again, we talked a bit about the Eternals previously, and there's definitely times where the special effects, takes away from the story itself. And here, obviously there are special effects throughout the movie. You showed a couple with the bridge scene, and certainly at the end where the command center is falling out of the sky, all special effects. But it doesn't feel like there was ever anything that was unnecessarily there. And again, it doesn't make me feel like it's bringing me out of the story or detracting from the story. I think the movie was done really, really well in that regard.
Yeah, no, agree. Here's a shot of Scarlett Johansson in what was supposed to be the gulag that they were rescuing Alexei from, and you can see her stunt double with the dots on her face where they're going to put Scarlett's face on there later. And the backgrounds, there's no snow, there's no mountains. Like yeah. You've lied to me, Hollywood. This is not true. But I do think they do an amazing
those
job.
Special effects were so simple that I think, again, same situation. It doesn't pull you out. It's not as noticeable because they were just really simple special effects.
Yeah. By the way, when it came to trivia, I was going to ask you if you could tell me exactly how many different Black Widows were in this movie, but I thought that would be cruel.
Seven.
You nailed it. Yep. I mean, there's like 12 that beat her up in the Red Room, but that's fine.
Oh,
seven probably works. Anything else you want to talk about before we pass final judgment on this movie? Anything else you want to add? And again, you're going to get a chance at the end to tell me whether you would recommend it or not, but I need to know right now, is there anything we want to talk about before we do final business and get to the results here?
I think the other piece, we didn't really talk a whole lot about final fight scenes and, the final, using the formula to remove the mind control from the widows. I mean, those were some pretty awesome scenes and a complex story, with Natasha breaking her nose to, sever the nerve that got rid of the pheromone that it kept her for doing what she needed to do. I mean, it was the final scenes were really intricate and I think pretty well done. And it's such a stark contrast to the rest of the movie where it's very simplistic and a good storytelling. And I think the end was just a fabulous contrast showing, how they all got together and really destroyed this evil man and this evil project that was in place.
And on, kind of on that note, that a lot of times a movie will fall apart at the end. Notoriously fall apart at the end. There was a Damon Wayans movie, I think it was called Mo Money, that was it didn't know what it wanted to be, and it was almost at the end they're like, we don't know how to wrap this up, so let's just shoot a bunch of scenes and be done. And this one, you're right, it all builds up, and in those scenes we are, as the audience, I think, confused enough about what's going on, but not confused about what's going on. Does that make sense? Like they're tricking us, but we can follow along, as opposed to it not making any sense as to where these things happen. The way that that she switches with her mom, switches places with her, the fact that, you know, how it all worked. They kind of explain it to us as it happened, and you're like, okay, that could work. That absolutely sounds like something that would have worked. You know, he sees through it, and, you know, there's the whole thing about the you know, like breaking her nose and severing the nerve and all that kind of stuff you were talking about. But I agree with you. It was well done. It's a happy ending after the explosion. You know, they don't kill Taskmaster. And then all the widows are set free, and then she gets her in the first post-credit scene. She gets her jet and she flies off to save the guys who are, you know, on the raft. And then in the next one, it's after the events of Endgame, and she's died, and that's when we meet Valentina. And it wasn't the first time. I think the first time we meet her is in Falcon and the Winter Soldier, but we meet her for the first time in the movies at the end of this movie in the post-credit scene. And it's important. Like that, sometimes the post-credit scenes aren't. The middle post-credit for Thunderbolts, not really. The end, yes. But so with this one, I'm watching this one and I'm going, this one was almost pivotal to that. And I think back again about what's getting me ready for Thunderbolts. This movie, I feel like more than any other, gets you ready for Thunderbolts.
It does. Well, just one other thing I like to say, you know, it gave a satisfactory closure to the end of the movie, right? The thing about the Marvel's movies is oftentimes there's so much, you know, vagueness at the end, and you don't know if there was much, you know, oftentimes you don't feel a strong sense of closure at the end. And this definitely gave me a strong sense of closure. And I think bringing Valentina back in and setting up, you know, much more work that's happening with her and her role going into Thunderbolts. It was a meaningful. I should back up. You know, one of the things that Marvel's been struggling with since Endgame has been a sense of cohesiveness across their movies and their TV shows in general. And this was a clear example of someone who put thought into what Thunderbolts was going to be years ago, and they actually developed a story, and it's actually finally paying off. And so, again, I don't think we see a lot of that today currently with Marvel. Hopefully we'll see it as we move into this next stage of Marvel. But this middle stage of Marvel missed that cohesiveness and that long-term vision of what the story should be telling. And this definitely pulled it off.
Yeah.
Probably as good as any other Marvel movie that we've seen.
The Black Widow, you mean, as far as setting it up?
As well as, again, developing and laying the background for a future movie.
Yep. And again, when I look back and I was joking with my son about, he's like, what do I need to watch before I go see Thunderbolts? And I'm like, Black Widow. And then I stopped and went, and Hawkeye a little bit, and Falcon and the Winter Soldier. That one might help. And have you seen Ant-Man and the Wasp? You should probably see that one. And, like, you know, you don't have to see all of them, but I think this one,
those movies, you would have been able to follow along just fine.
But this one,
because
this one introduces Yelena, Red Guardian. Yeah, I agree. All right, so thank you guys again for being with us tonight. Before we get to Final Judgment on, I want to say a big shout out to everybody who's been, watching along in the chat, hanging out, watching the videos, and has come to see us on our new channel, the Park Adventurers Club. Thank you guys so much for doing that. And a big shout out to our PAC members. We love the PAC, the PAC. The Park Adventurers Club members, and I want to say, we're still a new channel. We're growing pretty quickly, but if you want to help out, subscribe, like, and also you could join our Patreon. We have a Discord for our community, and we hang out in there, and we talk, and we just talk about a little bit of everything in there. So we'd love to have you. That's patreon.com/GoPack. We'll tell you all about how to get involved with that. And I want to give a special thanks to our pack members, Jungle Cruiser, Rosita, William, Monica, Michael, Jay Ware, Alicia, Vince, Jordan, and Sienna. Thank you guys so much for being supporters. And also, I'm going to have to add Mr. Rob Bazemore to that list, because he is also a big PAC supporter.
I'm a supporter.
Yeah, thank you for doing that. Upcoming content we've got. Last Sunday we did a Park Adventurers Club live, and that was with also Rob and Stephanie. We talked about Star Wars, and so you can join us for the go back and watch that one now at parkadventuresclub.com. Tonight we're doing our plus side review. I say TBD, but that was actually supposed to say Black Widow. And then this Friday we're doing a new show at 8 p.m. It's going to be me and our friend Annie, and it's called Rank It. And it's going to be ranking the the Epic attractions, not the Epcot attractions, but the Epic Universe attractions. With Epic Universe about to open on May 22nd, we want to go through, and will be spoilers on that. So if you haven't and you don't want to have any spoilers, then be careful about that one. And then you can come back and see us on Sunday night when we're going to be talking again about Epic Universe. Ron and Annie will join us for that one, and we'll be live on Sunday night. So lots of programming for you guys on this channel. We appreciate you guys being here. We love feedback. Let us know in the comments what you think about Black Widow, what you think about the channel, what you'd like to see. We want to hear all about it. So please let us know, or you can send me an email at rob@parkadventuresclub.com. But now is the time, my friend. Now is the best time, because now is the time when we ask you, if you were asked, hey, should I watch Black Widow on Disney Plus? My question to you is, would you recommend this movie?
Absolutely. This was a very pleasant surprise, and honestly, around second watch, this was better than I remembered. And maybe that's because I recently watched Thunderbolts and I could see the tie-ins. But this was a really well written movie, great pacing, good character developments. It was, again, one of the better written Marvel's movies of recent memory. They didn't try to overpower us or overwhelm us with a bunch of special effects or way too many characters. The fight scenes and choreography were among the best I've seen in any movie. It was just, again, really well written. And as I mentioned a few moments ago, it was exciting. It's really exciting for me to see that someone was actually looking forward and using this movie to set up the Thunderbolts in a way that Marvel just hasn't done in a very long time. So highly, highly recommend this movie. If I were to give it, a ranking, I would say this was probably a 4 out of a 5 for me. And I highly recommend it. It's something I think also that, unless you have maybe some really small children, it's not something that is, overwhelming with a bunch of grotesque violence or foul language. This is something you probably could, relatively, your teenagers would be able to watch with you without any concern, and it will keep their attention and keep them focused. Good movie.
Okay. I'm going to second that I would definitely recommend this movie. After rewatching it, I have a new interest in this movie. I think it was all the things you said, Rob. I think it was well done as far as the story writing. It wasn't convoluted. It was necessary. I think about that Secret Invasion series. That was not necessary. That TV show, we never reviewed it because I was just like, no. It just wasn't necessary, and I was looking forward to it because the comic book was such a strong series. What happened in Secret Invasion just didn't move the Marvel story forward at all. It didn't introduce anything we really cared about in that one. So this one does. I think it's a good story. It has great pacing on it. And I think that it's well acted. And also, if you're going to watch Thunderbolts, I feel like need to watch this one first. But again, let us know in the comments what you think. Thank you, Rob, for being here, for doing this show. I hope you'll come back. I hope we could talk about Doctor Who, but you're going to have to tell me like a little piece of Doctor Who that we're going to watch, not the whole thing, because I can't consume the whole thing.
I'll work that out. And we're in a new kind of reset of the series and a new season. We'll see how it turns out. If it's worth discussing as we finish it, I'll give you an education. I'll draw some charts and walk you through all the doctors. And also, I think one big thing of that, Rob, is they're trying to determine if Disney is going to renew it. If Disney is going to renew it, then maybe we go into that investment in time. If they're not going to renew it, then probably wouldn't make sense to have the conversation.
All right. Well, thank you guys for, again, in the chat for being with us. Thanks, Rob, for being here. And we hope to see you guys Friday night for Rank It, Sunday night for Park Adventures Club, or next week, Patrick Hackett will be here on Wednesday night to review Herbie Rides Again. We're going old school. We're going old school. Thanks. Have a great week, everybody. We'll see you soon.